Over the years, marketers have been analyzing the different generations, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and recently we have seen there's a red thread among all of them: speed. They all want everything to happen now. My name is Francisco Serrano, and I am the Chief Speed Officer at One to One and the host of the Now Gen podcast. Join me. Each episode, we talk about what's happening with brands, see how brand professionals across different industries cope with this fast-changing market, and live up to the expectation of this now generation. Welcome.
This episode is brought to you by One to One, the fastest day-to-day design and content studio. For more than 17 years, One to One has been their premier partner for many Fortune 500 companies, proving that tight deadlines shouldn't be a hassle.
Yeah, hello and welcome back again to the Now Gen podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how brands tackle globalization and how do they conquer new brands and new markets. And for that, I have a very special guest today. His name is Alexandre Ronsin. He is a well-seasoned executive with a lot of experience managing brands, not only in the Americas. He was head of Ferrero Mexico, of the Ferrero Rocher brand, and also in Luxembourg, in Europe, and also in the Middle East markets. So I think he has a lot to talk about this topic. And he's now the general manager of Korea and Japan for the Ferrero company. So welcome, Alex. Very glad to have you today here.
Glad to meet you, Francisco. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today.
Oh, very excited. We were talking offline about the importance of the markets right now, right? Brands not only in the food and beverage category are looking at making sure that their equity and their value proposition adapt to the different markets, right? So it's going to be interesting in gather your perspective because the Americas, Europe, Middle East is just one small place now. It's interconnected. And things, are going to be important to differentiate for brands if you want to conquer markets. But before we jump into that, I wanted to ask if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at right now, where you're coming from, so that people get to know better Mr. Ronsin.
So to make a long story short, so I started my career in Mexico 14 years ago. With Ferrero, first managing a brand, as you were mentioning. I was in charge of Ferrero Rocher, so the premium portfolio. And then I took over the trade marketing and category management department. It was a revamp that we did in 2012. And then after 4 years, I joined the headquarters in Luxembourg, where I was in charge of commercial transformational projects for Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. Then I took over the head of distributor management and commercial excellence for Middle East, Africa, China, India, and Turkey. And I recently joined Korea and Japan market as a general manager since September 2021. So I've been traveling a bit across the globe, seeing different perspectives, but also a lot of commonalities between geographies. Now, we believe that every country is unique and specific, but we see also as well that there are plenty of things that are extremely common now to see across countries, generation, and it's quite interesting. So you can see either something extremely different or extremely similar, despite the culture, despite the how can I say, despite the society, despite the industry, despite the retail landscape.
Yeah, and I mean, I always stop a moment and ask you, how does it feel? What does it feel to work for a brand such as importance of the Ferrero Rocher that because personally I love them. I just can't eat just one of them. I have to like 1 and 2 and 3. And when I see the relationship that the brand has, I mean, I remember when I was growing up, Luis Miguel was there, and who doesn't love Luis Miguel? I mean, he's just an icon. What's your experience managing a premium market and different with the different and the the competition and everything is happening so fast, and you need to accomplish certain volume and certain I know. What is your experience working with that kind of brand?
But first of all, I think there are a couple of industries that, despite the crisis or no crisis, will always be successful. No? And food and beverage is one of them. This is also one luxury that we have in this industry. No? Then second, regarding products like our brand that are premium, high quality standards, people are looking for that. No? And it's not a trend that is new. It is something that has been there for ages, and I'm sure will be there again in the future. No? So people are really looking value for money, making sure they are getting the best out of the money they are spending in the market. And thanks God, we have brands that are extremely strong, extremely solid, and of high quality standards. So it is always, at least in my experience, something much valuable to do and to manage. And the results are always extremely grateful to see how we are making people happy and spending good moments with their family, or pampering themselves, or gifting or celebrating or rewarding people with our products.
Yes, and I see. I mean, I grew with the Western culture of consumption and having that chocolate. Is that different in where you're at in the Eastern, in the Eastern market?
But what is probably different is the size of the consumption. No, if you talk about European markets, for example, you have an average consumption per capita which can vary from 1 to 6 kilos per year. If you, based on what I remember, in Mexico at the time, the consumption was kind of 150 grams per capita, and in Asia, depending the market, can vary from 50 to 200, 300, 500. So what is really changing is the size of the consumption. No? What is common is the celebration, in the sense that people likes to celebrate, people likes to give gifts to their family, to their relatives, to their friends, and this is same. Now we have here in Asia lots of celebrations that are unique, like Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, Mid-Autumn Festival in China, Chuseok in Korea, and then you have Christmas in Europe, you have Christmas in Mexico, you have Valentine's that is quite transversal across the board. Now it's in US, it's in Mexico, it's in Japan, and then you have Ramadan in the Middle East. So all of these celebrations are key moments where we are acting as a strong player because of the gifting positioning we have. So I would say that what really is changing is the size of the consumption and the everyday consumption, but what is same across the board are all the seasonalities.
Yeah, so we see time and time again that the equity of the product is the same. It's just you need to adapt it to the different markets and the different festivities.
Really, the key point is really to find the local insight that make your product relevant, and to find a way to enter and leverage on this local insight. No, without forgiving where you come from, without forgiving the DNA of your brand, the heritage of your brand, and make it successful, leveraging on one specific local insight to be relevant. This is the key I have seen in many brands, not only ours. I can name a few that I've seen also here in Asia. Brands like Nike or Adidas have developed certain shoes that are unique for the Asian market, because in Asia, people are used to remove their shoes when they enter in their houses, in their offices. So to make it simpler and more convenient for them, they have developed a shoe without back, so people can put it and remove it quite easily in a convenient way. So in order to be really to be relevant for local consumer, they have developed this unique model. So you see different style of adaptation to the market. So either you find brands that have understood a local insight and develop a product accordingly, or you find another set of brands that are not changing anything to the recipe or to their positioning, but trying to find a way to anchor their brand to a local insight. So either you go and you tailor at the maximum level, or you find brands that have that are consistent to their positioning and they don't adapt, so they don't change anything to their brand or brand positioning to be relevant locally.
And now that you're talking about adapting the brand, I always had the top of mind that the art of the packaging or the communication in the Middle Eastern and Asian markets are a little bit different than the Western side. So I know that that some brands like Nike you were mentioning, or even Ferrero has their own brand equity and identity. Has that been a problem to that you see, like, oh, what is this ad from Nike, or what is this ad from Heineken? It's completely different than the US. And how does a brand owner like you adapt to this type of changes, or is it just the same?
Again, I think it depends brand by brand. As I was mentioning, you will find brands that have dedicated communication, leveraging on specific insight, but developing ad hoc strategy, ad hoc communication to the market, and some other that stick to their own positioning, to their DNA, and just trying to find a local relevance. So, which is the same in the pack type. You see. Different for certain one, you see very different type of packaging. For example, in the case of food, you find also much bigger pack in the Middle East because of the size of the consumption. You see big pack, whilst in Asia you tend to find a very small case count for self-consumption or for small gifting. So what is changing also is considering the size of the consumption, the size of the packaging as well. What is really, I found in my experience, what is really standing out is the detail for quality on packaging. All the gifting in China, in Korea, in Japan. So a couple of markets that I've visited are really putting a lot of attention to detail and quality for the packaging.
Oh,
it's really outstanding. Compared to what we can see in other geographies, you see an attention to detail to make sure that the gift that you are giving is really the best, the way it is wrapped, the color that you are using, all the detail you put into wrapping the pack is really a culture per se. It's you find shops which their job is just to wrap the gift for you, but not like the normal one we can see in other geographies. No, it is really unique. It's an art. It's part of the tradition. So really brings the gifting moments to a superior level, clearly. So this is quite funny and quite different, no? But it's very anchored to the local culture once again.
Wow. For me, I mean, I've never had the experience of managing a brand in the Eastern market, right? But I would imagine that when I go as a consumer, I see this offering, and it's not the same as we find in Europe, but that portion of sharing and gifting, I've never. I mean, wow, I'm impressed about that.
Well, what you see as well is different flavors. Brands like
Hershey's,
Oreo, Kit Kat, for example, in Japan, they have developed a very unique and ad hoc portfolio to the market to be relevant locally. They have more than, if I'm not wrong, more than 30 flavors that you just see in Japan.
Wow.
And flavor like matcha.
Yeah, matcha. I tried that one.
Green tea. So very unique and tailored to the market.
Yeah,
and you
I
find
wouldn't.
that stick to their regular recipe and go with their regular testing printing. No, so again, it depends on the brand strategy. I think both ways are correct, as long as they are matching your end goal, no, in the market, and as long as you can be relevant, or how much you are ready to be locally relevant. Once again, no, again, it's really the company decision, no, to go to this direction.
Yeah, to go.
But I don't think there is one magic recipe. I think it depends on the brand, it depends on the product DNA, it depends on the strength of your brands, and it depends on your ambition in the market. No? So there is no magic recipe, in my opinion. It's just there is one recipe that is good for you. What is the recipe that is good for you? The good point is that there are plenty of alternatives. If you are willing to make really ad hoc, bespoke portfolio, you can. It is valid. If you want to stick to your brand DNA and do not change anything, it's valid. This is the good part in the end.
Yes, it's impressive how, like you were saying, right? The global brand director or whatever for, Nestle and Kit Kat has to say, no, flavors for the US market, this, never matcha. Or yes, let's try. I've sometimes seen Hershey's with pina colada flavors and all that, just as a gimmick, in Times Square. But I don't know if that really pushes it. But I see in the Eastern markets, it's different, right? So from your experience, what would you say? I know that there's no shortcuts, but what would you say to a brand that wants to engage, the Middle Eastern market and the Eastern market, where you're participating at the moment, and what are the biggest challenges that you see a brand, from your perspective, has in order to succeed in this market?
Well, I think the first one is really to understand your consumer and your shopper. This is, to me, the first thing, to really understand the consumer journey, the shopper journey, to understand what are the drivers and barriers to consumption, to try to find some sweet spots where you could enter quite easily. For example, there are certain applications in Asia, like WhatsApp, called Kakao. And Kakao is an application where it's a mix of Uber, WhatsApp, Google. So it's a mix. It's a super application. No? You can ask for a taxi. You can ask for a driver. You can text people. You can send gifts to people straight from the application, from the chat. So for brands that are focusing on gifting, it's the perfect match. No, this application is focused on gifting as well when it comes to e-commerce. So it's the perfect match, and this is the kind of sweet spot that I think you need to find initially to enter in a smooth way, understanding where your brand can fit into the consumer journey, and if there is any retailer platforms on which you could leverage to make the journey a bit easier for you. But once understanding the consumer, you need to understand how you can be locally relevant. I can give you some examples now that certain brands are trying to leverage on traditional food products in certain geographies in order to associate the moment of consumption of their product together with the local product. Instead of trying to impose one moment of consumption only for your brand or your product, one way to do it is via associating to high consumption product, locally relevant, with local testing printing to associate this moment of consumption to your product, for example. This could be another way to do it in a, I would say, in a smooth way. But everything will depend as well on your capabilities, no? Or which type of brand are you? Are you a global FMCG? Are you a local brand with a unique savoir-faire that you want to export to other geographies? Again, the approach would be different, no? So I think, as I was mentioning, there is no one magic recipe that is just one thing that is common across the board, which is to say, you need to understand the consumer deeply and understand how you can become relevant to this person. And this is, to me, the really the key point. Then whatever strategy we'll put in place, there are plenty. There is not one direction. Every direction will be valid as long as you are clear on what you want to achieve when it comes to become relevant locally. Do you want to address season and to generate equity via entering into a very intimate moment, which is the moment of gifting or seasonality? This could be another strategy. No, you don't necessarily need to go immediately to everyday consumption. To leverage on seasonality is also a very smart way to become locally relevant and generate penetration. Now, in a very unique moment, very intimate, very deeply culturally anchored into the society. So this is also one of the possible angles that you can have when you want to become stronger in a market that is not your core geography, let's say.
Yeah, and just want to explore a little bit more knowing your customer, right? Because this podcast is it's about, you know, the now gen, the instant gratification type of thing, you know, and wanted to ask if you see how do you call it, an influence in the market driven by this instant gratification, like, you know, in the Western, you have the checkouts of the convenience stores, and you have the gums and the chocolates, and, you know, and then you go and buy, or, you know, that moment that you say, let's do it, let's push the moment and try to do the impulse buying instead of a more thought out, oh, I'm going to go and buy that flower, or I'm going to go buy that shoe. How do you see the Eastern market?
Well, it's a market where I would say, like many other geographies in the world, where the impulse channel is growing. So impulse together with e-commerce are the winning channel at the minute. And based on the forecast of retail expert, this would be the trend of the future. So extreme convenience. No? Okay. So this is really one of the key drivers we are seeing. Again, not only in Asia, it is something that we see also in America, that the winning channel are the channel that are bringing extreme convenience. Not only because of the convenience, but also because in certain countries you see shrinkage of households compared to the past, where both in the couple are sometimes working, they don't have time to spend or willingness to spend in a hypermarket, for example. No? So that's why all the convenience channel are becoming more and more relevant, because it is convenient, because I don't need to enter in a hyper, because in the household we are only two, we have less kids, or we have no kids. So all of this is really having an impact on the retail landscape and on the winning channel at the minute. Of course, the COVID has also exacerbated a bit this trend of extreme convenience, not spending time, not having too much contact, and let's say having more social distancing between people. So I would say that the COVID has really accelerated this trend of extreme convenience and impulse purchase.
Yeah, and talking about the point of e-commerce, because e-commerce, it's related directly with, you know, impulse buying and with convenience, like you're saying, and the now gen want things now. Oh, I want Ferrero. Oh, I didn't order anything. Boom, boom, boom. Do you see? I mean, all over the world, e-commerce is just growing rapidly in more countries than more geographies than others. Do you see that market growing at the same pace than the Western world?
The e-commerce channel is growing at a faster pace than Europe, than in Europe, for example, no? Than most of the countries in Europe, I would say. There are extremely big platforms. Now you have Alibaba in China, you have Coupang in Korea, that is let's say the Korean Amazon, extremely developed, growing double digit, being the number one or forecasted to be the number one in the retail industry in Korea. In the future, it would be the only online player being the number one in the market, which is probably the case already of Alibaba in China. So the number one retailers are not anymore the traditional brick and mortars. They are now the e-commerce platform. And because they are bringing in a very convenient way, a huge assortment, typically at a price that is quite attractive, that is saving you time. Now, for example, platforms like Coupang in Korea, if you order before 11 p.m., you are delivered the day after before 7 a.m. So overnight they deliver, and it's not let's say the most. It's not the most extreme. It's already extremely good. It's called the rocket delivery system. So you order at 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. you have the goods outside. But in China also there are certain platforms called the delivery intermediates where you can order without mentioning brands. You can order a soft drink together with a chocolate, and you are delivered in Shanghai in 30 minutes in your office. So this is really, if you speak about instant gratification, we are talking about instant gratification.
Wow, that's a very and why is it because you have the culture and the humans to make that happen with discipline and make it executable at the right time, or it's because the power consumption of the market is such that companies have to develop that, if not they're dead, you know? What do you think it has more weight?
I think it's a mix of things. No, on one side, people probably having less time trying to optimize their time between office, transportation, or in big cities, mainly, like Mexico City, for example. People have less time, and to move around it takes time. If you take the car, if you take the subway, it takes a lot of time. So there is a need to optimize the time. But there is also a need of impulse purchase, of pampering myself in a certain moment of the day to get energy, or to reward myself for something I did. But I have no time. So platforms have really find this sweet spot to fulfill this shopper need. No, don't worry. You don't need to go down and walk to the 7-Eleven or to the Lawson or Family Mart to purchase some goods. You just order in the platform, and I will deliver it to you in 30 minutes. Wow. So it's a mix of a shopper need together with a business opportunity. Now the big question in this model is the sustainability, the profitability of this model for those platforms. No, because the key point is the delivery cost, and this is really the points where platforms are fighting, are suffering, because this cost of being so fast, so agile in delivering those goods in a very, very short period of time create a lot of tension in the P&L of those companies.
Yeah, I would imagine at the end it's like, yeah, you did your job, yeah, but we have numbers that are not exactly what we expect.
This is the big challenge at the minute. No, those companies are looking for market share gain. So at the minute it is okay. Now it is really to gain market, to own the market, and not focusing too much on the bottom line. But at a certain moment, the big question is, will they be sustainable enough to continue with this kind of service in the future? This is the big question mark, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay, so we're coming to the close of the interview, Alex. I wanted to ask you before we leave, um, from your perspective, if somebody's listening on the other side, and what would be your one takeaway uh, of this interview to make sure that, from your point of view, what are the most important thing that they can take out of this interview?
But I think first of all is really to be open to new things. If you want to be internationally or locally relevant, you need to be open. You need to be pragmatic as well, and less dogmatic. Because if not, you might face a lot of challenges. This is one thing. The second one is that you need to really understand to who you are speaking with. If you want to be successful, you need to be locally relevant. Do you have something unique to be locally relevant? This is the next question. Second question is, do you need to adapt, or you can stick to your brand DNA or product DNA to be successful? This is another one. And last one is really that there is no one single magic recipe to be locally relevant and to be successful. We have seen plenty of examples in different industries of brands going to the extreme customization to be locally relevant, and some other that have stick to their principle, brand guidelines, brand framework in order to be successful as well. So again, there is no one magic recipe. It's not a matter of just adapting your brand to be successful. Is what you want to achieve, and if your brand can do it without changing anything, or needs to make some changes to be locally relevant. No, this is, I think, in my opinion, what I've seen. And again, I've seen from extreme makeover of brands and product to same product across the board, same recipe, same positioning. So you see a bit of everything in Asia, in Middle East as well, of international brands. You see really a bit of everything. So clearly, to me, there is no magic recipe. You just need to understand deeply the culture, the people, to understand after that what will be the right strategy to become relevant to them. The last one will be around the channel perspective, now, as we were speaking some minutes ago, how the channels could be an enabler of your strategy. Now, how you can reach your shoppers via a deep channel strategy, considering all the movements, the shift between offline to online, and the blurred difference between the two in certain geography. Between on and off, now you cannot see anything, because plenty of offline customers are becoming also online player. Some online player also acquiring some offline facilities. So it is becoming extremely blurred. There is not anymore, no, this customer is an online player, this one is a pure offline. This is becoming less and less visible in certain geography, and specifically it is the case in Asia.
Wow, yeah, very interesting. What for me, it's how do you call it? This puzzling is, where do you draw the line between being, strict to preserve that equity and being flexible? Because those two things are now in everything, in everything. With the pandemic, coming back to the office or not, you need to be flexible, because if not, then you're gonna have problems in your house, with your spouse or with your kids. You need to be flexible, but you cannot be just so flexible that you let it go. So that is a challenge that I see, that each brand should evaluate and have that customer journey and customize it as they will. So yeah, well, thank you for that insight, Alex. So finally, this is the fun part of the interview, right? So since you are an expert in global brands and how to adapt to different markets, tell us, what would be your favorite global brand for breakfast, since it's right now 8:22 a.m. there in Korea, right?
Correct. But it's clearly Nutella. I think there is no
There's no match, right?
But I'm a bit biased because I'm French and I've been raised with this brand, so it's part of our journey. Nutella in France is as strong as is Coca-Cola in Mexico, for example. No, this is the type of penetration and that a brand like Nutella has in France, for example. Also, clearly, my breakfast is with Nutella.
And with banana or just Nutella?
Up to you, banana, bread, milk, up to you.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. We have to close this one out. I know you're very busy. Thank you.
Thank
You're starting your day in Korea, but before we leave, is there anything else you would like to say to your audience, where they can reach you at, if they wanted to just, send an email or contact you?
My profile on LinkedIn is updated, so I'm well connected as well. So don't hesitate to reach me via LinkedIn profile.
Okay. Okay, now you know, if you want to reach Mr. Alexandre Ronsin, LinkedIn is the place to do it, okay? Well, thank you so much, Alex, for being with us here today. And I thank you all for being part of this Now Generation podcast. And remember, if you want to learn more about what's happening with the Now Generation brands and how it's impulse buying, being managed by professionals across the globe, please tune in the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.